Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Richard Rosini. We'll be discussing his fantastic book, Sins of Omission, available for purchase through Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. But if you guys want to gather everything that Richard has to offer, do yourself a favor and head directly to his personal site, sinsofOmissionRR.com. There, not only will you find more information on Richard himself, you'll find more information on this fantastic narrative, as well as find hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing page. So one more time, that's sinsofOmissionRR.com. And guys, I will say that Richard was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business, Far Eastern Marketing Publishing. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, do yourself a favor and contact our great friends over at Far Eastern. And you can find out more information on them at fareasternmarketing.com. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Richard, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you so much for being a guest. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Cole. I appreciate the time that you're giving me.
Absolutely. Well, listen, the pleasure is all ours, Richard, okay? And we're very much looking forward to this and really looking forward to hearing your story. Now, before we go into the book itself, I know we have so much information to cover, Richard, so we'll hold off slightly. Start by telling our listening audience a little bit more about yourself and your background, please.
I always had a drive as a child to become, to work for law enforcement. But the drive wasn't just to help people. It was about how to find my father who abandoned my mother and myself, which is the part of the Sins of Omission, which inspired me to write the book later on in life. So with that saying, when I found him and later on in life, it was an awkward experience. And at first, because I didn't know, how most people have a father and call him dad and all that. Well, I couldn't. I was respectful. I call him sir. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to call him dad. I didn't want to call him father because he wasn't there for me growing up.
Absolutely.
Who was there was my mother. And my mother played both roles, mother and father. And it was very awkward for me. And most of the time she had to work and couldn't come to any of my functions. So I had to find neighborhood fathers to substitute the role of a father. And when I wrote this book, I sent a copy to my real father, and once again, he disowned me in anger about how true the book was. And myself, I didn't want to, I didn't know what the truth was. I put it all together by bits and pieces of stories told when I was a kid and bits and pieces of photos I found in the house. So I really had no idea. But it came out really well. And one of the things I said, I wanted to make sure that it flowed from one chapter to the other. I wrote it third shift, which is 12 a.m. to 8 a.m., which is my quiet time type of deal. And the words just kept on coming out. I couldn't stop it. And so that's what inspired me to write the book.
Richard, without further ado, let's go in more depth. Sins of Omission. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Sins of Omission takes place in a time where if you weren't, in the Italian community, if you weren't married and had a child outside of wedlock, you were considered a bastard child. And my mother had three indiscretions, as I call it. Three different fathers. And one was my sister. The other one was my brother who died of crib death, and myself.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And so because of the three indiscretions type of deal, my mother felt that it would be better off if we moved to the country. So we moved out of the city and into the country where we can grow up without labels and so forth and so on during that time. So with that said, my mother's struggling as a single mom with two kids and one income coming into the house. She was as strong as could be, but then my sister, she came down with cancer at 10 years old. Leukemia. They gave her about 5 years to live, but she is now 57 years old, and she's still fighting cancer. She has brain cancer right now and was diagnosed as terminal on Monday.
My goodness.
So I'm the only one left, and I am taking care of her the best I can. She can't comprehend to read Sins of Omission because she can't focus because of her brain. But I didn't want to tell my mother or my sister that I was writing the book because they would have said, that's my story, that's my money, give it to me. And that's the way I was always raised, like money, 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 or that's giving, hey, you've got a raise, give me more rent. And so it actually made me grow up to hate money. So it's not about, the book is not about the money issue. The book is basically the abandonment of my actual father and not having somebody there to answer my questions as a child. And so that's what I needed, therapy. That's what I needed to get it out. And I actually have gotten stronger with it out there. Yes, it did cost me, my father to disown me again and be very angry towards me. But I'm like, it's not about him. It's about what I went through. So, he feels bad because it actually was his story, but he wanted to keep it hidden. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it's actually my story, and I didn't want to keep it hidden. So, and so I put it out there. Now, my mother always said, how are you going to describe me? Like when you tell people about how you were born without a father, how are you going to describe me? Like I was like, no, Mom, I'm not going to disrespect you. I'm going to put it as nice as possible. It is what it is. Back then, it was more discreet. Now, it happens all the time. So I think now was a good time to put the book out because it's not in shock and awe. However, in this book, there is shock and awe. If you read the book with a 1967 lifestyle or time of living, you would get it would be more exciting to you about the time and how it was written. So I always put myself back in that time for writing that book. My friends at work, they said they thought when I wrote the book, they thought it was about my job, and I was like, there's only one little tidbit about my job, but I wasn't born yet, so technically. So technically, it's nothing that happens here, so don't worry about it. I'm keeping you all out of it. Otherwise, I would have to give up my top secret security clearance. So they go, you're very clever in the writing and your wording. I was like, well, when you put pen to paper, which is what I did all my life. I mean, I have written poetry. I was, writing. I was printing carefully. I was all about writing as a kid, but I could never organize it. And then I kept on researching it and so forth and so on. But my research wasn't going to college. My research was staying after school, going to a library or walking to the library by myself, because when I came home from school, there was no one to greet me. There was no reason for me to come home. There was no one here. At the time as a kid, there was only my sister was at school, so there was no one here. So I went to the library and I studied. And I was like, well, I became a volunteer in the library. I worked in the library, and I just, they were like, I was like a quiet kid. And then, but I still have social issues, awkwardness in talking to people. But I look at family functions now as more like research project, not like, oh, hi, how you been? Like how most people be loving and caring. I don't look at it that way. I look at it like, oh, how can I use this information for my next book,
Right.
So, and then that's what I look at. Like in my mind, I got the sequel to Sins of Omission that's going to be longer than just the first book. But I got to make it. I realize it's a little bit on the boring side. I got to make it a little bit more exciting.
Again, here on the line with Richard Rosini. We're discussing his fantastic book, Sins of Omission, available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, or directly through his personal site, sinsofOmissionRR.com. Richard, next question that I'd love to go into, and thank you so much for all of the information that you've relayed so far. I'm curious, what would you say was a highlight for you in writing this book? Or if not a highlight, maybe something that surprised you that you weren't expecting prior to embarking upon this journey?
Well, the surprise that I had most was the near ending of the book. When my father told me about what happened in his family life, I said to myself, that's the ending of the book type of deal. Because I had it pieced together, like on different notepads, scheduled wherever in the room I would jot down notes, but I assembled it all together. And I said to myself, that's the end. That's the near ending. However, my professor I have a professor that lives across the street from me, Dr. James Millett, and he proofread the book for me, and he says, I don't think you should print this book out until your parents are deceased. And I was like, well, I've had that all my life, and he was right, because my dad disowned me, and he's 85 again, and my mother passed away because, like I said earlier, my mother would have expected a handout because it was her story.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, you know something, Mom? I said, this is, if this becomes such a huge success, the money's not going to me. The money is going to help with cleaning up my mother and my sister's cancer bills. So, like I said, it's not about self-preservation on my half. I mean, my therapy was the writing of the book. I'm not going to give any money to my father and my 4 other siblings, because when he ran off in the book, it shows him running off, and when he went off, he had 4 other children, and they're all well off, and they think that I'm all about Dad's money, and I'm like, Dad. They called me up. They said, Dad doesn't have money. I'm like, I'm not about the money. I'm just about his health. I don't know what his health is, for my benefit. Most people know what their parents' health is. I didn't know what my father was, what he had, what he looked like, anything all my life. But I did know that something inside me was always being good, always on the right path, always helping people. Being there for others. And that was his nurturing natural ability that I believe I inherited through, genes or whatever. Secretly doing God's work everywhere I went. And my mother used to say, you spend more time at other people's houses than you do this one. And I'm like, well, they're nicer people. I used to say her. She gets to get mad because she didn't realize on how angry she was towards me. And that's, again, because I look a lot like my father, and that made her angry towards me. So I didn't want to be around the negative part of her ability towards me. So I always ran away to look for goodness elsewhere. It's a very exciting, quick read, and it's a very exciting twist of not knowing what's going to happen, and seductiveness. And I try to make it as clean as possible with my wording. It was very hard because I threw a lot of jokes in, and I really didn't mean to. If my dad hears this out in Texas, I really didn't mean to hurt him at all. It was just that I wish he had the time to get to know me, because I turned out great, and I'm a very strong person because of my mom and being self-sufficient. So that's why I love the book. I love how the publisher did the cover and everything about it. They had the vision. I had the words. They had the vision of the cover, and there's just so much that every time I carry the book, I look at it. I mean, I read the book at least 20 times, and I proofread it at least 12. But I just get the storyline. So I had to make sure all the characters in the book were basically deceased, and nothing came back towards me or my family, type of deal, on my writing on it. And I told my family about it, and they said, no, he's like, he never knew the story. And I'm like, no, I never knew the story. I said, I put it together from bits and pieces of, my uncle, who was a cop. He says, why did you try to find your father? He was like mad. And I was like, you turned out okay. You followed in my footsteps. You became, a cop. And I was like, I know I'm getting ready to retire from law enforcement. And I said, well, this is something I had to get off my chest. That's all. Everybody else had a father growing up. Why can't I make up my own father, or like create, get it out of my system what happened and all that. So, I just didn't know that side. It was like an empty void. So I'm glad I wrote it. I'm glad I found my father. Upset that he disowned me again. And my other brothers and sisters didn't have a chance to get to know me, or didn't reach out as to get to know me and or give me a chance. And my sister, who I grew up with, who I'm taking care of now by myself, dying of brain tumors. And that's when I think, despite my beloved wife, Shirley, I will probably have no more family ties, to put it in a polite way. Like I said, my wife Shirley understood the storyline of it, and meeting my father and his wife, and knowing how my sister and my mother treated me. But she's been there all throughout it. She was my coach, and I'm so happy to have found her. And I love her very much.
Guys, you know what I love about all of this? Is we're at the end of the interview now, and we've discussed so much information, yet we've barely scratched the surface. There's still so much left to be discovered, and that's why the onus is on you. There's no getting around it. Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, Sins of Omission, RR.com are the places you have to go. Sins of Omission is the title you have to pick up, and Richard Rosini is the author you have to thank for bringing it to your table. You surely will not be disappointed. Richard, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you once again for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
Thank you, and I appreciate you, sir.